Hello and welcome to the Quietly Visible podcast. I'm your host, Carol Stewart, founder of The Bounding Solutions and author of Quietly Visible, Leading with Influence and Impact as an Introverted Woman. And this is the podcast for introverted women who want to thrive as leaders and in life. Now, today's guest is Joanne Lockwood, who is an inclusive culture specialist, a professional speaker, an educator, and consultant in the DEI space. And we're going to be talking a lot about Joanne's experience of transitioning as a transgender and her transition, some of the obstacles and challenges that she's faced as a result of that, and also how resilience has been a key factor in getting through those obstacles and challenges, and also learning from what it is to be perceived as being different to the dominant group and how that can show up and how that can impact. So I'm looking forward to our conversation and hearing what Joanne has to say. So hello and welcome.
Hello, Carol. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. So before we delve in, tell us a little bit about who is Joanne?
Wow, that's a huge question. So Joanne is just turned 60. Having spent a decade being 50, I now find myself being 60 all of a sudden. Don't know how that happened. I'm married. I've been married for 37 years, 38 years this year to the same woman. We have two amazing children in their 30s, and I spent the early part of my career in, I would call, STEM subjects. So I joined the Royal Air Force from school, learning to be a radar and communications electronics engineer. From the RAF, I moved on to Civvy Street and I built a career in IT. So I spent a good part of my life working for banks, building societies, and other organisations. And then in the late 90s, I set up my own business in the south of England to support other organisations, small businesses in IT, computing, at about that point where broadband was just taking off. So around about pre-millennial, it was, IT was becoming kind of ubiquitous in everyone's space. But after 25, 30 years of that career, I got to my late 40s and realised that I'd been walking the wrong track, how everyone described that, both in terms of my career and also my whole sense of self. So I never really planned to get into IT. It was a hobby that turned into a career. I never planned to get into electronics, actually. That was a hobby that turned into a career as well. I think when I got to my late 40s, our children left home. I started questioning a bit more about who I was, who I wanted to be for the rest of my life. I kept thinking to myself, well, I'm almost 50%, 48, I'm 50% in 2 years' time. So I want to make sure the second half of my life aligns with where I want to go. So I sought deep inside myself, realized IT was out, and my gender identity, which had been plaguing my consciousness and subconsciousness for most of my life, I decided I need to act on that rather than keep repressing it. So at the age of 52, I think it was, I sold my IT company to my business partners and embarked on my gender transition. So that's kind of how I got here today. I think as part of that realization of all of those things, I've also realized that I was probably a high functioning introvert, if there's such a thing. I was able to mask and cover my inner self. And even now, as a professional speaker, I stand on stage, speak to thousands of people. I'm able to put myself into the zone, if you like, deliver, and then retreat quickly afterwards for my recharge and to overcome those anxieties. But I still have some social anxiety, but most people would kind of laugh at me when I say that, because again, I've learnt to mask and cover it most of my life and portray a bubbly extrovert. And I think a lot of that was helped by an unhealthy relationship with alcohol most of my life. And since the last 3 years, I've become teetotal. I stopped drinking completely. And so I'm less tolerant of situations where I feel uncomfortable. And I'm more likely to retreat and hide more now than I ever would do in the past.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing that. And, having, lived your life up until the age of 52, and then you sort of realize that you're not being yourself, so to speak. What was that like for you? We often see people who have to put on a mask and act in ways that are not them, or behave in ways or whatever, in order to fit in and to get on. So if we could look at how things were prior to your transition, and then maybe look at going through that. So what was it like? And did you know that that was not who you were, but chose to sort of ignore it? Or yes, tell us about that.
I think as you're speaking there, I think I'm it's going through in my head trying to contextualize it. And I suppose the way I probably put it into words is you don't know what you don't know. I
Mm,
think at the time I didn't realize the extent of what I was covering and hiding. Um, it was just a habit. It was just life. It was just what you get on and do. You leave school, you get on this conveyor belt of life. You acquire
mm,
responsibilities, expectations, baggage. And I'm not saying my family are baggage, but you as responsibilities, financial dependency, paying the mortgage, debt, servicing debt, whatever it may be. And you just kind of think, well, this is who I am. This is what so you don't often stop. I often describe it as being
mm,
on this escalator, and you press the stop button, and then you get off and think, hang on a minute, do I really want to go there? And no, I didn't. So I think
mm,
most of my life I was just following this path. As I said in the intro, my gender identity was something that had been with me since I can remember, ages 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah, junior school, infant school. And I think what happened was I was just suppressing it. You get busy, your brain doesn't have any idle cycles for it to process anything other than what you're focusing on, and you kind of
mm,
push it to one side. It's almost like a hobby or an interest where you can just pack it away and pick it up later. And I think what happened was, as I became more conscious about this, so instead of being subconscious, I bring it into my prefrontal cortex a bit more and playing with it, toying with it, understanding with it. The internet came along, awareness came along. I started hearing stories from other people. I started being more aware that being transgender or however I describe myself was a thing. It wasn't just me.
mm,
Um, I suppose all that sort of came together in my 40s. I think the empty nest, our life changed as a couple anyway. I became more and more frustrated with IT. So I think there was this big kind of flashpoint and intersection, as I say, around 2016, 2015, when I was approaching my 50s. But before that time, I was kind of happy, happy with the family, drinking too much, eating too much, probably being that person at a party that everyone steps away from, laughs at, a bit too outrageous sometimes. And I realized that that wasn't me. And I was waking up in
mm,
the morning. I wouldn't say ashamed of myself, but I certainly woke up with regrets, a perspective that I thought, that wasn't me. That shouldn't have happened. I need to be more controlled. And then I think I started thinking about and analyzing that more, that self-awareness. And I get the self-awareness kicks in. And then you start really exploring your mind, really exploring some of the depth of things you've just buried and ignored.
mm,
So I think
mm,
up until a certain point, I don't know, mid-40s, mid to late 40s, I was probably high functioning, just getting on with stuff, not worried. And
Mm-hmm.
then the lid opens, the crack appears, and then you start unpacking things and going, hang on a minute, no, I see it now. I've been living this myth. And I think the hardest person to come out to is myself, admitting to myself. Um, and I think once you start exploring change, it becomes self-fulfilling, becomes easier. You don't, you take a step forward and nobody notices or nobody cares. You take another step forward, nobody cares. So this fear that you have holds you back, this massive, great big cliff edge. The reality is it's not a cliff edge. It's just a sequence of small steps. And like any project plan, like any change program, I just embarked on that kind of process with my life, tackling things in priority order, um, prioritizing important things in my life, like my family and some of the relationships I had in my life, prioritizing those and drawing my own red lines about what I needed to keep, what I could shed, what was optional, what was integral. And I think it was building up that plan. And even having said that, I sound quite methodical and clear-headed about it. I can't remember the exact expression, but no plan ever survives first contact with the enemy, or whatever the phrase is. So no matter how much I thought about it, no matter how much I planned it, people respond in ways you never predict. My family responded in ways I didn't predict. My
Mm-hmm.
friends, some of them surprised me positively, some of them surprised me negatively. So yeah, you have to keep trimming and modifying and course correcting in order to keep those goals realistic and move on from the things that are holding you back. So it was quite a challenge at the time.
Yes, I can well imagine. And you mentioned about your overuse of alcohol, and oftentimes people who overuse alcohol, it can be to mask things that they don't necessarily want to face or don't necessarily want to have to deal with. So was that any was that your experience? Do you think that the alcohol
Um,
was a way of being able to blot out certain feelings about your gender identity?
I can't blame my gender identity at all, really.
Mm,
That wasn't the issue. I think at a certain stage in my life, because I think when I left school, I joined the Royal Air Force, and I'm not sure how it is today, but at the time, I fell into with a group of friends and a kind of habit of going to the Naffy bar most nights, um, end of squadron parties, always revolved huge barrels of beer. I was living 24/7 with a group of people who like to drink, who like to be outrageous and like to do stuff. So I kind of fell into this habit of being that person who
mm,
fitted in with this group of people. And I, I'm not even sure whether everybody in the group wanted to be in their group. We just kind of egged each other on. So I think
mm,
that set the tone right when I was 18, 19. I probably started drinking when I was 13, casually. And again, I fell in with people who used alcohol, not necessarily as a mask or a cover, but as a party drug. So it became quite habitual in my life from a very early age. So as I got older and older, it just became part of who I was. This mask I used to wear used to be the person people expected to show up. They'd expect me to be drunk. They'd expect me to drink. They'd expect me to go away for weekends.
mhm.
So I think I was living up to this mantra or this avatar of me that I was complicit in. I just carried on.
Mhm.
Um, so nothing particularly to blame about it, but I think what it was is it masked so many parts of my life that I never stopped to uncover what I really wanted without it. And
Yeah.
I was able to make the change. I gender transitioned and sold my business while I was still drinking. it was only 3 years ago I stopped drinking, but I transitioned 8 years ago, 9 years ago, effectively.
Mm,
So I was able to perform that. But I found myself post-transition, post-career change, still using alcohol in a way that I was waking up in the morning, and again, I wasn't proud of myself for whatever reason. I made decisions that I found. Well, I analysed the decisions I made, and I thought, hang on a minute, I made that decision. That wasn't the decision I would have made had I been sober. I wouldn't have sat there at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to persuade the barman to keep serving me drinks. I was in Australia speaking at a conference, and I remember a friend of mine. We were there when the bar shut, and we persuaded an Uber to take us to a local gas station. And we managed to find a gas station that sold alcohol at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. So we're sat on a park bench drinking bottles of beer in Melbourne. And why? Why was I doing that? Why couldn't I have gone to bed at 11:30 like most people, like sensible people? No, I had to be the one that stayed up. I did the same in other countries again. And I look back and thought, why am I doing that? Yeah. And I think some of that is maturity, but also some of that is self-realization that that's not who I want to be. That's not who I am. And I think if you're going to make change in your life, change starts with you. Who are you? Who do you want to be? And that self-analysis helped me wake up one day and go, nah, I've made that
mm,
change. I've gender transitioned. I've sold my business. I've embarked on a new career. I've stopped smoking 21 years ago. I can do stuff. I've got resilience. I've got decision-making capability. I don't need to drift with someone else's expectation. So I think that's what it was really, that realization that alcohol was creating this persona around me that
mhm.
I wanted to escape and become proudly a non-drinker.
Yeah. And so, what was the pivotal moment when you recognized that you no longer wanted to live the life that you had been living, and you wanted to find yourself? Was there a pivotal moment, or was it a series of events?
I think it was an evolution. I think it's one of these
Mm,
situations where the more you explore, the more you allow yourself to dive into this and, daydream, deep thought. You explore it and you think, well, why aren't I? And the only
mm,
answer is fear. And then you go, well, what's fear? It's my mind telling me I can't. Can I? Yeah, I've got
mm,
belief. I know other people who have successfully navigated this. Can I? Well, I'm sure I can. So I think it was that realization that what was holding me back was me.
mm,
Um, and certain things came into place. So I was able to sell my business to my business partners. Well, they made me an offer to buy me out because I was suffering from some poor mental health around that time, around 2015, 2016, because about my gender identity and other things, family, relationships, and some other issues in my life. So I think them offering to buy me out gave me the keys to the door to escape because I couldn't face gender transitioning in the business I was in. Just the stigma, the fear, the anxiety around having to tell people that I worked with day in, day out and see them day in, day out. So I was able to, if you like, chicken out, bottle it, run
mm,
away from that situation, which meant I no longer had that major anxiety holding me back.
mm.
So that's what kind of unlocked the next stage. Because you have to be able to earn a living, you have to be able to have money. And
Yeah.
fortunately, that them buying me out my business gave me a nest egg, not a huge amount, 2 years worth of money. And if you've got 2 years worth of money, you should be able to achieve anything. You can set yourself up, reinvent yourself, make serious life changes once you've got that pot of cash to do something with. So,
Mm,
so I think I had that privileged opportunity without the major risk of having nothing. I had a soft landing, if you like.
mhm, mhm. Okay. And so when you made the decision to go through the transition, um, and you sort of talked about some people were, some friends surprised you, some didn't. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I often use the phrase, my friends are my friends because they're my friends. And I soon realized the people who weren't my friends, the people who were awkward, they were clumsy, they were confused, they had negative talk, um, gossiping behind my back, that kind of thing. And I often think about this as like when you leave school, when you leave a job, when you move on, you don't bring all the friends with you. You don't bring your whole network with you. You know, you lose people along the way. And the people that stick with you are the people that matter to you and you matter to them. So I think what happened was I realized there were people who mattered to me and I also mattered to them. There was a symbiosis there. And we worked through things. So we had conversations. People looked at me, scratched their head, go, I don't get it. And I said, it's okay. I don't get it either. I'm trying to figure it out the same way as you are. Let's work on it together. So I've got friends that I've known for since I was at Yay High, junior school. I was in the Cub Scouts with, that I still hang out with now. I've got friends who I've known from my 20s onwards, known them best part of 25, 30 years. And they're great friends. I've got friends who came and been and gone. Most of my people I knew in my IT career have fallen by the wayside. But I've now developed a global network of new friends, new business associates, with people who actively see me as a friend as much as I see them as a friend. So really symbiotic. And that's been reassuring. My family, it's a big ask to ask your children to rethink about who dad is, and one's wife, partner, spouse to rethink about their own sense of self in the relationship when someone changes like I have, and my brother, my mum, my dad, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law. So all these people here had to transition more than I did. They had to get used to a new me. So they really surprised me that with the right amount of work and the fact I cared about them to help them through this, it became pretty successful. Okay, it wasn't overnight. Some of it took 2 or 3 years. But I had another mantra, if you like, was in order to be liked, you have to be likable. In order to be loved, you have to be lovable. In order to be worthy of respect, you had to generate that. And so all those things I've just said were in my control. I could decide to be likable. I could decide to be worthy of respect. I could decide to be lovable. I could have taken a different path and decided to be unlikable, unlovable, a real wally, a real idiot. So I had it in my control to affect how people saw me. So that was the basis of this evolution of understanding myself, is that I had that power of self, which manifested itself a bit later on when I stopped drinking and realized that I was still bringing some of that baggage with me. So yeah, people surprise me with enough time, with enough effort, with enough self-regulation, enough emotional intelligence. I was able to navigate that. And yes, there were dark times. There was times where we were all struggling. We laughed, we cried, we shouted, we screamed, we showed emotion to each other at various times. But that also allowed us to really get to know each other again and rebuild on strong foundations, not on the sand of the past, if you like. We weren't trying to patch things over. We were taking it right back down to the base and saying, can we do this from here? So yeah, it's created stronger relationships now.
No, that's good because I guess having those relationships are crucial for the support that you get. 'Cause, what we all need, that kind of support when we're going through things. Um, and so, in terms of the transition from tech to DEI, talk about that. And what made you go into DEI?
Yeah, that's when I was sitting, like you do, sitting there staring into space, blue sky, thinking about what I wanted to do. I kind of had this. My big idea was to become a professional speaker, although I didn't know what that meant. Was to try and become an educator on trans people and trans identities, with the aim of helping one person have a better opportunity than I had. And I didn't have a terribly bad experience. But the mantra that you hear around was, if you're trans, you're going to lose your house, your car, your wife, your job, your career. You're going to be really destitute. And I thought, no, I'm not playing that game. I don't want to take that book off the shelf, and that's my life. So I fought back, and I thought, well, my vision was to change, rewrite that book for other people, so they can follow a different path. So that's how it came about. I think what happened was I realized that it wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about being trans, gender diverse, LGBTQIA plus. It was around creating a world where everyone can thrive, everyone can be themselves, everyone has opportunity. We use the phrase equity. We could use the word inclusion. We talk about belonging. We talk about culture. All these buzzwords. I think what I realized was I wanted to use my inner self and how I see the world and how I believed it, the unmasked version of me, to try and bring that joy and belonging and positivity into corporate life, into the recruitment process, into the employee experience. And I use the phrase positive people experiences. That's all we all want. We want a positive experience in life, and we can thrive through our own merits, our own impetus, our own capabilities, however we want. And there's nobody there saying we can't. It's kind of the idea. So that's how it came about, was this, again, the discovery of self, and the message that was in my head was something I felt I could bring to others. And that's how it started, really.
Okay. And in terms of sort of working in that space, and with all that's happening at the moment and the backlash there is about particularly in the US, about DEI, and in some ways we've seen some of the impact over here. Have you faced any backlash at all? Has it affected your work at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID was a good work. COVID was good for me. Organizations wanted to invest in their people, the well-being programs. They were furloughing. They had government subsidies. They had probably quite a bit of cash in many organizations, and corporate organizations wanted to entertain their people. So there was a lot of lunch and learns, a lot of training going on. So I was very busy over COVID. I think what happened was when the COVID money ran out, the doom and gloom of the economic crisis kicked in. A lot of political unrest. Then the budgets got tighter, and we're now seeing the highest unemployment, in a while. We're seeing many organisations laying people off or not recruiting. The temp placement and the perm placement, if you talk to recruiters, are lowest since 2008. And when organisations aren't hiring, they're not retraining, they're hunkering down on what they've got, and things like DEI get cut. I mean, whether you like Trump or hate him, and I'm not a fan, he's cutting things like DEI because that he saw that as an easy target of something that didn't produce output. And I think that's maybe a fault of the DEI profession, if you like, or the EDI profession, was we weren't focused on actually outcome. We told lots of great stories and had lots of great things to do, but we never actually changed hearts and minds to any tangible, measurable way. So I think what we're seeing now is organisations go, well, hang on a minute, we plowed all these millions into DEI programs, and what have we got? We've got a lot of people celebrating hashtags, and we haven't actually got a lot of change. We haven't got the benefit of McKinsey's promise that we're going to be 15% more successful because of it. Okay? And they're feeling ripped off. So I can understand that there's been this realignment about what DEI does and what it produces. So yeah, it has decreased, but I'm still working in a space where I'm looking at outcomes, measurability, actual change, tracking that, proper project management, proper return on inclusion rather than return on investment as such, and focusing on culture, belonging, and environments where people thrive, regardless of who you are. Because we shouldn't be disenfranchising anybody. So yes, it has been a downturn, but there are still plenty of people doing stuff. Resistance is not futile. There is plenty of people out there still believing in the way of creating better environments and cultures. So yes, it's tougher, and maybe some people who are not invested well, or they don't have the capability to ride this out, may fall by the wayside. Lots of corporate DEI jobs are being lost. Those people may well go back into HR, go back into another profession. I don't know, but yeah, there will be a correction, and I think those who hang on in the next year or two will come out stronger.
Yeah, and I think what you said there about creating environments where everyone feels like they belong and they thrive. I think, regardless if it comes under the banner of DEI or something else, organizations still want to be working towards that. They want everyone to thrive, they want everyone to feel like they belong. So I think that whilst we may see DEI programs cut, or under that banner, there will still be that need to have environments where people belong and they thrive, regardless of what it's called. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, if I came to you as a business and said, "Look, I've got a magic bean here that will help you recruit people from a broader demographic to give you more choice, more skills, more experience that are better aligned with your customer and will want to stay with you longer," you're going to go, "Oh, I'll buy that bean." And that's what we're
Yeah,
talking about here, isn't it? Creating environments where
yeah,
people want to hang around, they want to stay, they want to be progressing, they want to give discretionary effort, they want to get involved, they want to give all their all, and they want to be treated fairly. And that's all people want. And I think DEI got lost in this hashtag nightmare of so many different options, and people lost sight of the fact it's actually creating environments that I want to be part of, you want to be part of, we all want to be part of, because we want to come back at the end of the day and feel, wow, I've done a great job today, and I felt respected, and I've got passion, and I've got purpose.
mm,
That's what we're talking about.
yeah. So looking at resilience and going through what you've been through um, does demonstrate a lot of resilience. So how did you develop your resilience to go through that transition and the the barriers that you may have faced as a result?
Um, I think I've learned resilience by getting it wrong a lot,
Mhm.
making lots and lots of mistakes. You don't get to 60 years old without mucking up a lot, and I mucked up a lot from my teenage years. I've been fired a few times for various reasons. Um, I've felt that next morning shame after drinking too much. I've had fallings out with people. I've made poor business decisions in the past. I've made poor managerial leadership decisions in the past, bad financial decisions in the past. So I think I've got a whole portfolio of lived experience of messing up. And I
Mm,
think when you do that, you wake up the next day, you dust yourself down and go, the world's still turning, the sun's come up, nobody's died. Um, I've messed up. Okay, lesson learned, moved on. And you only truly mess up if you don't learn the lesson and you do it twice or three times or keep repeating the same mistake. So I genuinely say my resilience has come through the school of life, learning on the job. And another one of my sayings that I say to people is that, no child ever learns to walk without grazing their knee.
mm,
So we have to create, we talk about psychological safety. We have to create spaces where people can mess up, but there's a cushion, there's a carpet, there's a sofa you can fall on, and you're not going to crack your head on the pavement every time. So creating those safe spaces where people can learn, grow, and develop is important. And I've been fortunate enough to have spaces where, okay, I've messed up, and sometimes I've had to leave and walk away from situations and not be welcome back. But I've always self-reflected and realized that, yeah, that was me. That's on me. I messed up. So personal
mhm.
accountability, I guess.
Yeah, and like you said, that going through life lessons, and nobody, an easy life isn't promised to any of us, and those setbacks, those knockbacks, we can either learn from them or we can continue, as you said, to just make those same mistakes. And I do think, I know for myself, as I matured and seen that I've gone through particular challenges and got through, and um you look back and you think, well, I've done that before, I've got through worse than this, and you get by. Does help to develop that resilience. And so, in terms of how you work now as a professional speaker, educator, consultant, what sort of organisations do you work with, or individuals do you work with? How do you work?
Um,
You
I describe my market as people. So people who care about people. So
know?
whether that's a team lead, a senior leader, whether that's an HR professional, EDI professional, organizational development, talent acquisition, whatever. So people who have a people responsibility in some way, and also
Mm-hmm.
people themselves who want to be enlightened and learn more. And that's cross sector. So I work from blue light organizations through to local government, through to finance, um, through to publishing, most sectors, because most sectors have organizations that employ people, and those people want education. So yeah, it's mainly those sort of organizations. No specific industry. Um, I also work with event bookers who book me to speak on stage or come to their
Mm-hmm.
conferences or schools and their inset days, whatever it may be. So yeah, across the organization, and some of it is around the LGBTQIA plus trans awareness, where I talk to some clients, and some of it's around inclusive leadership or inclusive recruitment or conscious inclusion on other angles. So yeah, a good mix of industries and clients. I suppose if I'm a bit flippant, it's people with money.
Yes,
It's yeah. So
that
it
does
does
help.
tend to be profitable, cash rich organizations. So not necessarily size in terms of headcount, but generally size in terms of profitability. So I do work a lot with small recruiters, but they're generally quite successful small recruiters who have
Mm-hmm.
um, the capability and wealth to be able to fund programs. But I'd say traditionally 100 people plus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you would consider them the medium of the SME.
Mm-hmm. And where's the best place if people want to learn more about you and your work? Where's the best place for them to go?
LinkedIn is my main hangout. So if you Google or go to LinkedIn and type Joanne Lockwood, uh, I'm pretty sure I'm probably the only one or close to the only one. So you'll find me there, the inclusive culture expert. If you Google my name, Joanne Lockwood, or Bing or any other search engine, I tend to come out pretty well on the first 4 or 5 pages. So again, you'll
Mm-hmm.
find me there. My website is seechangehappen.co.uk. That's SEE changehappen.co.uk. And I've also got my speaker website, which is joannelockwood.co.uk. So generally search for me. I'm pretty much everywhere. So, and my podcast. I run an Inclusion Bites podcast. So if you search for Inclusion Bites, and if you want to be a guest, please do. Or if you just want to follow, subscribe, you'll find me on Apple, Spotify, and the usual places.
Great, thanks. So we will put links in the show notes so that people can easily access those. And so it's been a great conversation. And what piece of advice or what top tip would you give someone who is maybe at a place where they're at a crossroads, and whether it's because they feel that they've lived a life that wasn't aligned with who they are and they're on that journey of self-discovery? What would be your, based on your experience, your top tip? And it could be a journey, it could be anything that they're discovering about themselves. But based on your experience, what would be your top tip for them?
Yeah, as you're talking now, I'm trying to think about something insightful. I suppose maybe the only regret you'll have is not doing something, just always wishing, always wanting.
Mm,
Um, if you're running into fear, you're running into can't, you're running into won't, or that will never work, then think about a 10-foot high brick wall. You can't run through it, you can't climb over it, and you can't go underneath it, but you can go around it. So can you change the rules? Can you change your thinking to avoid the wall, or put your car in reverse, reverse back, go 3 miles back, turn right, and you pass the wall that way? So there's always a way to overcome an obstacle if you want to. So it's working out if you want to and thinking about how you can make that change. Because if you just step there looking at the wall will never move.
Thank you for that. Great words of wisdom. Thank you. So thank you so much, Joanne. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you, listeners, for listening in. Do go to the links that will be with the show notes to find out more about Joanne and the work that Joanne does as well. If you are wanting to increase your confidence, influence, and impact, if you haven't completed the free assessment on my website, go to aboundingsolutions.com. There's a free assessment there that you can complete that will give you ideas about areas that you can focus on. And so until the next time, bye.